I think also that's if I'm not mistaken, that's how that the cultural shift in the individual is changing. Like, I'm not just gonna write you a play. Now you're using me to create a video, so
Uh-huh.
that is more currency. So I guess maybe the question for you is, how do you take that and make it into currency and make it into something that will not just bring you something to pay the rent with, but also get you more jobs?
Mm. Well, I feel like it's all, I mean, as a person who's kind of obsessed with marketing and referral marketing
Yeah.
in general, I feel like that's all connected, you know? Because that video, if it's on YouTube, will live on YouTube forever. Now,
Hmm.
now, long after the show is finished, Christopher will still have a video of himself doing wrestling moves in the office. And that's valuable because now,
Yeah.
if no one didn't know who he was, someone who might be new to his work can have multiple entry points. They might pick up the written form of the player, they might see the interview with him on YouTube. And social currency and actual currency, monetary currency, are very closely related, though they're not identical. And I would warn against, and this is something I wrote about recently too, I would warn against just trying to be popular.
Right. Tell
Because you
me
don't,
more. Yeah.
well, I feel like because social currency and real currency are so closely related, too often people just go for social currency.
Right.
But they haven't put on their business brain yet. So all they are is popular and visible, but they because they haven't designed a financial strategy for themselves, they're that's all they'll be is popular. But they don't know how to turn it into money, and that's can be problematic. And I see that happening with a lot of young people.
What's like a key step in changing that and turning it into actual currency?
Well, a big part of it, like I said, is, and I talk about this frequently, is empathy. And people think it's corny because it's like, oh, we're talking about emotions now. But, but honestly, empathy is where it's at. Business people are more, in some ways, demonstrate more empathy because they're always asking the question, how can I help you? And
Hmm.
artists, too often, are just thinking about how can I get on stage? How can I get my work out there? Who can help me out? And that's problematic, you know?
Hmm.
So if you're really going to think about real currency, it's not a secret. It's actually ancient, the
Hmm.
wisdom, and just ask the question, how can I help you?
Hmm.
You know? If you're helping somebody, they'll pay you to do it. That's basically it.
That's true.
You could sell a stick of gum and you could sell a play the same way by helping somebody. Someone's going to have to benefit somehow.
Right, right. That's a great message because I think a lot of the fear here in LA, especially, I think that the culture is how can you help me instead of how can I help you? And not in theater per se, but perhaps in the Hollywood Tinseltown community.
Right.
Um, and it's always about how can if I go to that party, what job am I going to get because I go to that party? Do
Right.
you know? Yeah, instead of the other way around.
And those people become parodies of themselves. You know? Like no one takes them seriously.
Right,
And those people aren't memorable. And that's what's
right,
the crazy thing is we're living in a weird law of opposites. The more people you help, the more you'll help yourself out. So instead
right.
of, all those people who are trying so hard could do a whole lot better in their own careers if they were just to make sure that they had more to offer or they're very clear about what they were offering.
Hmm. So you have to first provide a service, and then that will bring in currency, that will bring in actual jobs or things like that.
A service. Another way of putting it would be to provide a value. To
Mm,
provide a value. Because it
okay.
doesn't have to be a service. It could be a product. It could be a hookup. You know, sometimes people just need the hookup, and people make money this way. Again, It could be a service or a value. It could be anything, but mostly it's value.
Right, right. Okay, and then something else that I wanted to talk to you about was this generational shift from like what our parents viewed as surviving, and how the changes in the economy that we as 20, 30 something olds are facing, and how we're seeing that we can't survive on the money our parents used to make.
Right.
How has that impacted the arts world, you think?
That's a good question. Well, whenever I think about an older generation, the first thing I think is we're spoiled. That's the first thing I think. Because, you know, anyone who has parents or grandparents that immigrated to this country, I mean, they were hustling hard to ensure their survival and the survival of their kids. And as beneficiaries of that hard work, we're a little bit spoiled because we don't hustle as hard. Sometimes we even choose poverty, which is kind of doesn't really honor their struggle. And so, I mean,
we can go chasing our dream, and they never had that opportunity sometimes.
Well, but it depends what the dream is. Their dream was a better life and survival, and they've been able to chase that dream in that respect. And then our dreams are a little bit more selfish, and it's a detriment to us. So I think, you know, economy-wise, like I said, I'd love to talk about how artists can make more money as an option, but I don't think it's really an option anymore. I think we have to be smarter, and now it's a requirement, because otherwise the only people that get up in the world in the arts field will be people who come from extraordinary privilege.
Right.
Which we sometimes neglect. The fact that people who are our heroes never had to try as hard as working class artists. Right? And so this is really a call for more working class artists who didn't have a leg up to start off with, or a you know, an easy entryway into the profession.
When you say working class artists, that's artists that don't necessarily come from academia and just started doing the work?
That would be one way of putting it. Another way of putting it is, I mean, let's look at Hollywood actors, for instance. Like, some of them seem to come out of nowhere, but when you research their background, you realize they came from extraordinarily well-connected, wealthy families. And that's true in every segment of the arts population, be it visual arts or theater or music. And because we don't understand this as a normal sort of, sorry, not normal, but, you know, as the ordinary population, we don't see that or are privy to that information. We think we could accomplish our dreams just as easily as those guys did. And that's not true. We have to work extra hard. We have to build our capital, because we didn't have any to start off with, maybe. But those guys did. Right?
Right.
So that's...
Which is something that's been mentioned a lot, is that we have to work twice as hard to get half as far. Is that pretty on the money, you think?
Well, when it comes to working class versus extraordinarily wealthy, yeah. And I'm not hating on the wealthy people, you know. Obviously, they're the ones that, you know, give all the money. Foundations come from wealthy people, so I'm not hating on them. But I'm saying, as working class artists, we need to be a little bit smarter about our game, and in some ways a little bit more brutally honest with ourselves, more realistic.
Is there any way to change that equation where you work twice as hard, but you get where you want to go?
I mean, there is. And I think I've been interviewing a lot of artists and speaking to a lot of artists specifically for my podcast series, and a lot of people have come up with really ingenious solutions. Some people have freelance gigs that are not related directly to their primary art. I know another guy who eventually I'll interview who he runs a motorcycle shop, and he makes his art on the side from that. I know somebody else who came up in the ranks of arts administration, and now after 10 years of really hard work is able to really secure more stable art gigs. So, but the recurring pattern is that not as many people make money from grants and from benefactors buying your work as
Right.
it would appear.
Right.
And the earlier we learn that lesson and teach that to our prospective child artists, the better.